Welcome everyone, I am the Depressed Dior, and this is Arkham Horror the card game. The original plan was to play the Forgotten Age for the next campaign, but I attempted to play it, and anyone that's familiar with the Forgotten Age knows it's one of the most difficult campaigns, and the first two scenarios are definitely one of the most punishing slogs there are. There's a lot of opportunities to get trauma and everything, just like the numbers, like for difficulty levels and things like that, like skill values and stuff that you had to beat, seem to just be much higher than anything in the other campaigns. And well, at least comparing the first scenario, I didn't manage to even get through the first scenario. Partially because I kept making rules mistakes and having to restart, and then others because I literally got enraged and just did not want to progress any further. I know it's very difficult, and supposedly it gets better after the first two scenarios, and I've heard that the story is very, very good, but I could not bring myself to finish I wasn't able to start the Forgotten Age. I'm still pretty inexperienced with this game. Even on easy difficulty, I just could not make very much progress with the investigators I was using, and I wanted to go ahead and just use this opportunity to go ahead and just continue on with some of the other campaigns and explore some of the other investigators and decks, and then come back for the Forgotten Age later. I've heard that the Return 2 fixes a lot of issues, especially with the Explore deck. Since I play two-handed, which means only two investigators, the Explore deck is actually very, very punishing because it slows me down quite significantly if you're very unlucky. So yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say about this. So I will be doing the Circle Undone instead. Circle Undone is definitely a bit more. This is actually what I've been playing with my current board game group. So I've done Scenario 0, Scenario 1, 2, and 3, with Scenario 3 making the most mistakes. So I'm not as blind in this campaign, but I do plan on playing this through. And for the investigators, I'll be playing with Lily Chen as the Thug, and Trish Scarborough as our Kluver. Lead investigator is going to be Lily Chen. I try to alternate between Kluver and Thug being the lead investigator. Also, at this point, I may just end up selecting who I feel is better for the start. Like I mentioned in previous videos, at this point, I'm going mostly blind for most of these campaigns, but I am familiar with at least the first scenario of most of these. So I do kind of know what's coming as far as certain choices. And unfortunately, the lead investigator choice is kind of significant and can definitely be very dangerous if you pick someone that can be crippled by some of the campaign's effects. Anyway, with all that said and done, let's go ahead and talk about Lily Chen. So, Lily Chen, she's a martial artist, chosen, warden, 3 will, 2 intelligence, 4 fight, and 3 agility. You begin the game with each discipline in your deck and play unbroken side face up. As an Elder Sign effect, you get +2, and after this test ends, flip a broken discipline you control to its unbroken side. I have been preparing to confront this evil for my entire life. My focus must be absolute. She has 7 health and 7 sanity. And then on the other side, her deck size is 30, and despite being a mystic, she's very much actually a guardian wearing a mystic mask, as you can see with these deck building options. She has access to mystic cards level 0, just level 0, and then guardian cards levels 1 through 5, and then neutral cards 0 through 5 like usual, and then her splash is actually 5 guardian cards that are level 0. So she's kind of stuck with very limited options in the beginning, and then you're supposed to be kind of filtering her into guardian cards. She also has other restrictions, which is no firearms. She's a martial artist, so no gun fu here. Also, during the deck's creation, she will start with 1 discipline asset added to the deck, and is considered part of the requirements. And then every 15 experience points she may choose to add a different discipline to the deck. There are 4 disciplines, 1 representing each of the primary stats. And then in addition to that, she does have access to. She gets a Burden of Destiny, which is her exclusive weakness, but she gets 1 per discipline. So as she progresses, if you add more of your disciplines, it will add more weaknesses to your deck. And then, of course, she gets a random basic weakness. So what's kind of interesting about this is essentially you generally want to have cards that are either mixed class, because you're trying to Blade Shin tends to favor being a brawler type. But with access to the 0 Mystic cards and having decent willpower, at least average willpower, and you can make it decent with the correct discipline, you could also kind of make her into a sort of flex. But since she can't get beyond level 0 Mystics, majority of our growth cards are going to be mostly stuff revolving around fighting. There's a few things that can help you with Cloven, but nothing super significant. Well, I won't say super significant, but it's going to be hard to juggle all that. So really, your start's going to be very interesting because it's going to be very based off of the 5 Guardian splash that you're going to have here with level 0s. But there are a few ways to get around it. One of those ways is, of course, using mixed classes, such as the Enchanted Blade, which is both Guardian and Mystic, in which case it will count as a Mystic and won't take away from your 5 Guardian splash. The other way to get around it is to take the In the Thick of It, which I don't know if we've actually played with before, but it's a level 0 neutral card that you can put in your deck, and it's permanent, so it's a passive that just stays out of play. And when you purchase it, you will get 2 trauma of your choice. So you can either get physical or mental trauma of any combination up to 2. Then you get 3 experience points. So you actually start with 3 experience points, which can ensure that you at least get some Guardian cards that are level 1 or all the way up to 3, essentially. And that can help you kind of flesh out your deck a little bit more. Obviously, starting with trauma is dangerous, but if you have ways to at least mitigate it, it's not the end of the world. And since she's 7/7, you can easily make her into a 6/6 and be reasonably still durable, at least able to survive. Also, the Guardian cards tend to be very good for soaking, as far as allies are concerned. And they also have some healing options as well. Not to mention that Mystic also has healing options. So the other thing you also take advantage of is customizable cards. And in the previous campaign, we did mess around with our first customizable card, and I'm using the same one in this one, known as the Runic Axe. Every experience point that you put into a customizable card will affect all copies of that customizable card. So putting 1 experience point into Runic Axe makes both Runic Axes in the deck become level 1. So that's a nice way to kind of get around the Guardian level 0 requirements. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the deck. But first, obviously, I just showed off that I have Runic Axe. Obviously, Inscription of the Hunt is definitely the go-to for a lot of Runic Axe upgrades. I went with Glory just to have the ability to heal, so I can heal off the damage I start with. Also, having card draw as a Guardian is pretty useful in most cases. Since she does have access to level 0 Mystic, she does have access to Down the Rabbit Hole, which we messed around with in the previous campaign with Zoe. So a lot of her deck building in this case, or a lot of her upgrades are going to be focused on upgrading current cards, such as the Runic Axe, as well as upgrading cards that are already Guardian, or can convert into Guardian cards. For example, the Holy Rosary is a level 0 Mystic card, but when you upgrade it, it becomes a level 2 Guardian card. And then the Enchanted Blade starts as a mixed class, and then it can eventually either become a Mystic or a Guardian weapon. Alright, so going through the deck, let's go ahead and talk about the exclusive weakness first, which is up here. Burden of Destiny. A flaw, when you draw it, you must choose one of the following effects. You can either flip a discipline to its broken side, and it can't flip back this round, or you can take 1 damage and 1 horror. In the beginning, this is not too bad. What makes it kind of dangerous is you'll get more of these as you get more disciplines. But for the most part, the 1 and 1 is not that big of a deal. And once you get additional disciplines, you could just flip one of those disciplines pretty easily. Which also, I did forget to talk about the discipline. What's interesting about her exclusives is that they are passives, which means they are not included in the deck. So most decks usually start at 33 cards because of how the deck building works. But for Lily Chen, she starts with 32 at the moment. But it will gradually grow as she gets more weaknesses. So, as mentioned before, the disciplines, there are 4 of them, 1 for each stat. There's one for fight, 1 for agility, 1 for will, and 1 for intelligence. All of them have the same passive effect, which is they'll give +1 to that given stat. So if this one's Prescience of Fate, gives you +1 fight. So this effectively makes her have 5 fight right out of the box. Very useful. And then all of them also have an activated ability that will do some sort of significant effect. And then after that effect is resolved, it will flip this card over. So this side is the unbroken side, and then the opposite side is the broken side. While it's broken, you lose the stat increase, and you lose the activated ability, but instead you have a reaction where if you meet a certain requirement, you can heal this card back to its unbroken side. So I went with the Prescience of Fate because I wanted to start with 5 fight, and they'll take care of a lot of the fighting issues, and I can focus more on using the Runic Axe for other things like plus damage and glory. Also, just having 5 fight is just really comfortable. Now, the activated effect for this is you'll get plus 5 skill value for the next skill test you perform this turn, and then after you do that test, it'll flip. This can be kind of rough because you're essentially spending 2 actions to do 1 effect. But if you're in a situation where there's not much combat, or you have pretty good control of the combat with just 4 fist, you could just use this ability to do something that you would otherwise not be able to do with your stats. Like, for example, investigate. With this, you can essentially spend 2 actions to do an investigation at 7 book, which gets you almost a guaranteed clue. The other options are pretty decent. Some people will usually go for like plus willpower if they want to do a little bit more of the spellcasting type stuff. I don't really see too many that mess around with the plus agility right out of the box, and then plus the intelligence is generally not something I see too often. That being said, the other effects are generally interesting. The willpower one lets you do sort of you take a horror to heal 3 damage, or take a damage to heal 3 horror effect. The intelligence one is it makes you, if you have less than 5 cards in your hand, you draw up to 5. And then the agility one lets you take 3 different fight and or evade actions. So they have some pretty neat effects that you can mess around with. So even if as you grow and you get the other stat increases that you don't really intend on using, you can still use those disciplines to do those big effects. Anyway, sorry for getting distracted there. Let's get back to the deck. All right. So yeah, we have the plus 1 fist discipline. And so if we do draw Burden of Destiny, there's more than likely we're going to probably just take the 1 damage and more horror. If you have any allies, it's not direct, so you can just put on an ally. It's pretty simple. Her basic weakness is Stupor, which is pretty much the safest thing Lily Chen could have. We had Stupor in the last campaign. What it does is it limits the amount of parlay, draw, and investigate actions you can do to 1. The only thing that really can affect Chen here is the draw action, because sometimes in downtime you'll just draw cards. But for the most part, this thing, it's a non-issue. At worst, it eats a draw. She does have ways to heal herself, so if necessary, I can always heal the horror and just remove this thing. So honestly, not a big deal. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the 3 experiences that we spent. I already showed off one of them, which is going to affect the Runic Axe. So both those Runic Axes are level 1, so they do not count towards the 0 cost, the level 0 splash. The rest of the experience went to 2 sweeping kicks, which I believe we've messed with before, but essentially it lets you attack with your both your fight and your agility. It does plus 1 damage, and if you succeed, it will automatically evade. It's also a tactic, which goes well with the In the Thick of It card, which is pretty effective. All right. As for the actual splash of level 0 Guardians, I have 2 Beat Cops. Honestly, Beat Cops are a pretty go-to. Having this out would, on top of the discipline, would get her 6 fight, and then with an axe or her sword, she'll have 7 fight, which is pretty strong. She also has 2 1-2 punches. I was definitely a big fan of this card in the previous campaign with Zoe, and she only had 4 fight as her base. So having 5 fight or up to 6 fight thanks to Beat Cop, and then this becomes a 7 and then an 8, and then it becomes even higher if you happen to upgrade these things. It's honestly really good, and it's a tactic, so it can also be put in the thick of it. And then the last card was just a Prepare for the Worst, which is also a tactic, which can go in the thick of it in the future, and it's just a way to kind of get my weapon. Much like Zoe, she has the same weapon layout. She has 2 Runic Axes and 2 Enchanted Blades. I didn't have much issue getting weapons in the previous with Zoe, so it's not a big issue with the Prepare for the Worst, so I can always try to filter something else in instead. And that's essentially the level 0 splash. Everything else is a neutral card or a level 0 mystic. For the most part, let's see, what do we got here? We go with no spells. We do have a backpack. We only have one of them. In previous campaigns, I found having 2 backpacks is just not kind of redundant. And sometimes I don't even bother upgrading them. They do provide a foot, which is always good if you do need to actually do an evasion check. I do have a couple of Drawn to the Flames for some Cloven if we need to. I have a cat mask. I did have the option to get the wolf mask, but that does count towards the level 0 splash. And cat mask does give you willpower, which tends to be something that comes up more often in the Mythos deck in most campaigns. Obviously, having access to level 0 Mystic means Deny Existences are available, as well as Ward Protection, so I grabbed both of those. And then I also have some Holy Rosaries, which I mentioned before, can actually upgrade into Guardian cards if you need to. They also provide Horror Soak, and they give +1 willpower, so she can actually get herself up to 4 willpower pretty quickly. Besides that, everything else is kind of, I believe, skill cards. Yep. So we have, my skill cards are kind of limited, because again, I can only have so many level 0 Guardian cards. So Vicious Blow is unfortunately not really on the table for this one. So I actually grabbed some level 0 Mystic cards that are actually kind of interesting as skills. One of them is Defiance. It provides 1 wild, and you can choose a symbol besides the autofail to essentially negate it. So it's pretty awesome because you can always pick that symbol that ended up becoming ridiculously, difficult, like one that scales, and to be like, okay, now this is a 0 essentially, which can be very helpful. She also has a couple of overpowers just in case. These can also upgrade into Guardian, so that's also helpful. It's mostly for just filtering through the deck or doing actions that are not fight related. She does have some Promise of Powers, which of course do add Curse, but they also add 4 wilds, which can be very helpful. And then last, she has an Unexpected Courage just in case she needs to do something outside her current kit. So yeah, she does have a couple emergency caches. These are supplies, which can also be put in the thick of it. For the most part, in the beginning, you'll probably be starved for resources because a lot of these things are expensive. After that, it kind of filters out pretty nicely. Anyway, that is it for Lily Chen. Let's go ahead and... I actually didn't read her flavor text. Chen Li speaks rarely. When she does, her words are measured and wise. After a lifetime of disciplined training, every gesture is graceful, uncluttered by hesitation. The monks who raised her said that she was born for a special purpose, to face a great evil. Now they believe that evil is at hand, and she is the only one who can stop it. So she's like a heroine-type character. Alright, so over here we have Trish Scarborough. She does also have a customizable card. She is a rogue. Last time we did a rogue, we had them be kind of a pseudo-thug. This time, this one is going to be a Clover. Trish Scarborough, the spy, agency, detective. She has 2 will, 4 intelligence, 2 fight, and 4 agility. As a reaction, after you discover 1 or more clue at a location with an enemy, either discover 1 additional clue at that location or automatically evade that enemy limit once per round. This will trigger whether or not, even if she's not engaged with that enemy, she doesn't even need to be at that location with the enemy to actually trigger this effect. So if you have a way of investigating from a certain range or investigating for any other location besides your own, this effect will be very useful. The only restriction, of course, is you have to have an enemy on the board. If there are no enemies on the board, then she kind of is limited on her options. As the Elder Sign effect, it's +2. And if it's an investigation, you can choose any revealed location to be investigating instead. So this can definitely have some high potential. Though in my experience, since the Clover is usually the one that's also exploring, my options tend to be pretty limited for this because I'm already getting all the clues in the previous location, so it just doesn't trigger as much. That being said, if it does happen, it's rather useful. Anyway, on the other side, 30-card deck. The splash is very straightforward. We got Rogue 0 to 5, Neutral 0 to 5, and Seeker 0 to 2. She has to have In the Shadows, which is her exclusive card, Shadow Agents, which is her exclusive weakness, and then 1 random basic weakness. Trish had always excelled in both body and mind. Her unwavering focus on excellence and her fearless disposition, a winning combination. Given her stellar academic and athletic records, everyone expected to see her become something great. Instead, Trish took a job at a commercial Coke company, The initial shock of her humble work eventually wore off, and the exceptional Trish Scarborough faded into obscurity. This suited Trish just fine, as it made it harder for anyone to realize the truth. Her job was a cover for her true work as a spy with the Black Chamber, the Bureau's code-breaking agency. So yeah, she has decent agility to avoid enemies if necessary, and she does have a decent intelligence to do some clueving. And she does have access, of course, to some of the yellow cards, and 0 to 2 is generally some of the best yellow cards. So, let's go ahead and go through the deck. So, her exclusive first, in the Shadows. It is a tactic. It provides 2 agility and 2 wilds for her if you want to commit it. It's a 0-cost event. It's fast, but you have to play at the beginning of your turn. Disengage from each enemy engaged with you, and then until the end of the round, enemies cannot engage you, and you cannot deal damage to enemies. You're not really going to be usually doing damage with this Trish, and this could be a way to essentially not only investigate a location that's already swarming with enemies, but you can also use your ability, because the enemies are still there, they're just not engaged with you. You can use your ability to essentially, get a clue, or potentially evade one of them to help out the thug. Besides that, we got her exclusive weakness, which is Shadow Agents. It's a 3 fight, 3 health, 5 agility enemy with Hunter. While Shadow Agents are engaged with you, you cannot discover clues except by investigating. So this essentially negates not only her ability to get an additional clue, but it also negates other ways of getting clues as well, such as working a hunch, technically kicking the hornet's nest, art students, and I think it might even negate deduction, but I'm not entirely certain on that one. But the other thing the Shadow Agents can do is they can hit you for 2 damage, which for Trish is not too bad. She does have 8 health, but it does add up very quickly. But forced, after Shadow Agents are evaded, you can discard it. Now, trying to just do a normal evasion check on these guys is difficult even for Trish. She has 4 agility versus their 5. But remember, your ability to automatically evade an enemy will still work. So, if you can find a way to investigate and get a clue from a location, you can essentially use that as an opportunity to go ahead and just auto-evade these guys and get rid of them. I do have some cards that kind of help with that. Pretty much the big one is the Breaking and Entering, which is a 2-cost event, which lets you add your agility to your investigation. If you succeed by 2 or more, you can automatically evade an enemy at that location. So what you can do with this is use this, evade them with the card itself, and then use your ability. Well, actually, no, you can't do it that way. So yeah, you can just use this to auto-evade an enemy, auto-evade the Shadow Agents, get a clue, and then continue doing whatever you're doing to possibly use your ability on something else. Besides that, we got the basic weakness. In this case, is a monster, which monsters tend to be kind of annoying. In previous campaigns, I was always groaning every time I drew my monster weakness, because not only did I waste a draw, but I also now have a problem I have to deal with. Also, my luck is uncanny, where if I do a last action draw, I tend to draw the enemy and then get hit by them. But this one's actually not too bad. It's 4 fight, 3 health, 3 agility. Prey is bearer only. It's Hunter, and then spend 4 resources, and you can parlay to get rid of the Mob Enforcer. And they only hit for 1 damage, so it's practically nothing. But more importantly, it's an enemy. So if Trish draws this, and, I could just keep this guy around for a little while and just use him to get additional clues, which is always useful. And then as for the rest of the deck, as you can see, I do have a mixture of yellow and green cards. Let's go ahead and talk about the customizable card first. We have Damning Testimony, which is a 4-cost asset. It's a illicit item, and it takes up 1 hand slot. It starts with 3 evidence, and you can spend an action to exhaust it and choose an enemy at any location. Investigate your location. If you succeed, you may spend 1 evidence to discover 1 additional clue at a chosen enemy's location. This card is practically built for Trish. There's been situations where there's your final thing that you need to do is get clues off of a location that has a big monster on it, and you can literally just use this to freely investigate your current location and just grab not only a clue from the location that the big monster is on, but also use your ability on top of that to get an additional clue. The only restriction, of course, is right now it costs evidence. The good news is it only costs evidence when you succeed and actually want to do the ability. So that's the good news. The bad news is even if you fail, it is an exhaust effect. So you only get one shot at this per one of these you have out in play. And more than likely, you're only going to have one of these out in play because these are expensive to get out. Rogue is a big money class, but I generally don't build this. I don't have Trish built with a lot of money in mind at the moment. There are a number of upgrades. Unlike the Runic Axe, I don't plan on going full into Damning Testimony. The big things I'm interested in is getting additional evidence and then the +2 intelligence. The Search Warrant is also something I might be willing to grab if I have a spare point laying around. But the other effects you can do with it potentially is you can also auto-evade. You can actually investigate their location instead of doing it as a passive. So Surveil is actually kind of a decent option. Actually, yeah, Surveil might be something we want to do because you can actually do that without using the evidence. And then Expose is a way to actually kill enemies, but it's very, very expensive evidence-wise and probably not worth the effort. Anyway, as for allies, we have art students. I'm always a big fan of the getting Soak and a free clue and for a cheap cost. I do have a medical student. The one other time I played as Trish, I ended up getting leg injury as my weakness, which made it very, very difficult to actually do anything with her because I needed her to move around and evade, and I couldn't. So medical student is purely just in case I get leg injury or stupor, so I can actually get heal damage and horror. This is also a way to kind of heal Lily Chin's trauma, at least for that campaign or for that scenario. Also, it's 2 cost, gets you a heal, and gets you some soak. For accessories, we have Lucky Cigarette Case. I don't think we've messed around with this yet. It's a pretty go-to for a lot of rogues that have decent stats. If you succeed by 2 or more, you can exhaust to draw a card. And the level 3 version is supposedly one of the best cards because it can get you, it gives you a lot more control over what you draw. As mentioned before, I do have some ways of getting clues for free. So we do have a Working a Hunch, the art student, of course, which gets you a free clue and also triggers Trish's ability. I, of course, have deductions to help with tempo. We have Eureka to kind of give you a little bit of flexibility on the symbols, as well as get you some card draw. I do have a couple of perceptions to help with card draw. It's also used just in case I need to do something non-investigate related that still requires intelligence. I do have some quick thinkings. I'm hoping to trigger this more often than I did with Jenny, because her stats are slightly better. I do have a couple unexpected courages just in case I need to deal with the mythos. And then I do have, of course, shortcuts for mobility. Pickpocket, this card tends to be pretty iffy, but since Trish can passively do evasions, I'm hoping to get some additional card draw out of this. To be honest, if I was to change something, I'll probably drop the pickpocketing for something else. Mask-wise, I do have 2 choices. I can either go with Fox Mask or Mouse Mask. Fox Mask probably is a lot easier to recharge, but it's only intelligence and agility, and I wanted the plus willpower just in case I have to deal with the mythos or some other effects. Because as you know, the game loves throwing a brain test at you. Mask, the biggest issue, of course, is getting the offerings back, which tend to be how I play tends to not happen as often as I like. She also has Obfuscation, which is a way to negate attacks of opportunity. It's a fast arcane spell, and it has 3 charges. For every charge, you can use it to negate the attack opportunity. Very useful if you just want to deal with an enemy, because you can just be like, all right, I'll have Obfuscation, soak the enemy attack while I investigate, get the clue, and then either get another clue or get rid of the enemy. Magnifying glasses to, of course, help with investigating. They're fast to get out too. And as mentioned before, I do have Kicking the Hornet's Nest. This is the first time I've ever played with this card. It's a way to potentially force an enemy to spawn on top of me. It will get me, if I successfully do it and get an enemy spawned on me, I can then get a clue, which then I can use to get either another clue or evade that enemy. And then, of course, gain some resources off the enemy based off their health. So I tried to have some ways to get additional enemies. I went with only one of them because I wasn't too comfortable with having 2. Besides that is... Oh, I do have one way of doing damage, which is the Start of the Pot. This can potentially do 2 damage to all enemies at my location, and I can then disengage if I roll high enough. So I'm hoping this will go very well. There's a leveled up version, which is actually worse. So the level 0 is what you want for this. Besides all of that, I've already pointed out breaking and entering, so that is everything. So for the basic weaknesses, these are pretty soft, and I'm pretty happy with what we drew. Now, whether or not our luck will carry over to actually, be successful in the actual scenarios, I can't say. In any case, hopefully, after this video, I will set aside cards for potential upgrades in the future. But I hope you look forward to seeing these investigators, because you're not going to see them in the next video, because the next video is going to be Scenario 0, which is Disappearance at the Twilight Estate, which doesn't use our investigators. Spoilers. Anyway, I am the Depressed Eeyore. This was Arkham Horror the card game, The Circle Undone, and I'll see you guys next time.